Hello everybody, welcome to a new episode of Leadership in Bluejeans. With me today I have Raul Dumitrascu, Global Talent Development Manager at UiPath. Welcome Raul.
Hi Frank.
And I have Magor Csibi, Head of Leadership and Organizational Culture at Trend Consulting.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you both too. As usual, say a couple of words about what you do in your job role usually. Raul, why don't you give it a start?
Absolutely, sure. So basically, throughout the time I've worn many hats. So from trainer, facilitator, program manager, team leader. Now more specifically in UiPath, I manage a few large learning projects where I'm doing the project management part, but also some part of design and facilitation for helping leaders grow themselves, let's say, and their teams. So this would be in a nutshell.
Super. Margot, how about you?
When I joined Trend Consult, our dream, what we articulated, is to change many organizations one at a time, because we believe that culture, and especially organizational culture, shapes the behaviors not just when we are at work, but also when we leave work, when we go home, when we go out in society. So this is why we have the mission, to create as many constructive cultures as possible around us, and this way to change somehow the bigger culture, the bigger scheme in our society. And what we are especially focusing is leadership development, culture, but also we are also on training, sales, and other aspects of corporate life.
Yeah, and following you on LinkedIn, everyone can see that you're very, very passionate about the subject of leadership and culture. And very recently, there's a lot of talk and discussion about the subject in general, but also from you share a lot about that. The effects of the Great Resignation, which now has arrived in Romania too, leaves us with the question, doesn't it, about, well, what is it if I'm an executive leader that I should be doing to continue to have access to talent? Instead of, which is the question, of course, of both retention and being able to attract talent both at the same time. So give us your thoughts on this in a nutshell.
One of the reasons I ended up in a domain which I had very little connection before is that I led several organizations in a terrible way. So I was overly focused on results and KPIs and indicators, and I always believed if I'm overachieving, what the shareholders or what the board is asking, I'm doing my job. And I had actually a conversation in my life when I had the regional manager came and he said to me that, okay, the results are great, everything is overachieved, but people are unhappy. And I said to him, if you want people to be happy, hire a clown. If you want results, keep me. And I didn't realize that results are not coming from me. Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to have an idea, it's one thing to want to implement an idea. But in order to reach that result, you have a lot of people contributing. And what I did back then is actually ignoring their effort.
Right.
And they felt it, and I lost some good people because of this. And I realized at some point, because it's very hard to change this habit. And I had a very, very hard time of my life when I went to take a mandate in Korea. And it was so hard for me, I needed to change my way of thinking or my way of managing people, because I was not anymore the guy who is providing the ideas. I was not the guy anymore who led all the processes, and I needed to cede the power to the people. And then I discovered what is the difference, between a leader who is trying to control and lead and handle everything, and what is when you try actually to help your people to bring the best out of them. And this is exactly what is happening right now, I do think. Many big companies are hiring mercenaries with very, very sharp looking CVs who are saying, I took this company and in 3 years I produced these absolutely fabulous numbers, and if you hire me, I can guarantee the numbers. And now I can say, you can put me or any experienced manager to an organization for a 2-year mandate and we can produce numbers. What remains after This is the difference, because you know, if you know how to play with numbers, it's very easy. And this is what is happening in the Great Resignation. All those people who are moving from organization to organization and producing numbers, sometimes on the expense of the people, sometimes even on the expense of the greater scope of the organization, right now are stuck and started to produce some damage. And I do think that many organizations realize that they invested too much in satisfying their leaders or keeping their leaders happy, and very little in keeping the people happy.
Yeah, fascinating.
And now we need to realize that the strength of our organization or any organization relies on the people and not on the leaders.
Right, I mean, there was so much in this. Raul, do you want to react to any of that?
Again, for me, I just want to say 2 points. One is that actually, right now, if you look at the numbers in Romania and Europe, we're a bit different than the market US. So, in all honesty, maybe the Great Resignation is not so great in Europe yet. A different angle to this, I would say, just looking at the last 2 or 3 years, because these are special times. But in special times, you see what people are at their core, you know? So what I think is important, and what I myself have experienced, that, and I agree with him, besides results, you should also look to the human part of the story. So look to your team members, talk to them besides results, you know? And I'll get even to the ground level. You know, have a meeting with them, start a few minutes and ask them how they are. How is their day going? Do they, you know, have they had some issues in their families? Have they had some tough times recently, and so on? So these are the small things. Leveling up a bit, I would say that some of the elements that I felt during this year is a lot of emotion, and sometimes coming from nowhere. So things are going good, the results are coming, the team is doing good, but still there are some frictions that nobody knows. And I would say one of the key lessons for me was full transparency. So if I have a bad day or a bad time of the week, just say it. You know, go to your team and say, listen, I feel like crap, and how about you? You know, are you in this or not, and so on. So in a nutshell, I would say create the safe space for them to bring their whole self to the jobs, because it's not, or at least from my point of view, is not necessarily a world where 9 to 5 works, or at least that doesn't work for everybody. So we need to be fully safe to bring our whole selves to work, meaning our feelings, our families, our experiences, and so on. So that's
what would be if let's imagine there's an environment where that actually happens consistently, where every manager, every leader has this degree of vulnerability, and with that also, of course, self-confidence, and applies, emotional intelligence to all kinds of situations. How do you think that would impact the resignation wave in some way?
Hard to say. I would assume in some way yes, because I still believe that phrase that it becomes a cliche that people don't leave organization, they leave managers, it still holds true. Because at the basis, it doesn't matter whether your job is, what company you work for, at the basis you're human. So when you feel you have, or you're in a place where you work with other humans, and you feel this openness, this safety for me to bring in, okay, I will not complain every day, but just the freedom to bring in something more than just results, KPI, and like we were discussing earlier. I think that's one key to the whole situation. And I think people tend to stay more, or are more engaged, or are more closer with the managers and the leaders that create this kind of bond and relationship. We don't need to be friends, but we need to feel human where we work.
On the Great Resignation, I do think that there are some differences between Europe and US. But when I talk with leaders nowadays, especially in the IT sector, I talk with companies from Iași, from Cluj, from Bucharest. Everybody is telling to me that the turnover started to get higher and higher and higher. When I talk with retail leaders in Romania, many of them told me that it's harder or it's impossible for them to hire people in a rhythm, that they are leaving. So I do think that it's here, but also Europe is less entrepreneurial than the United States. So I do think that some trends catch up a bit later. So it will be some difference. And on what you asked, I read a very big and very interesting study published by the MIT Sloan Review. They studied all the aspects which are causing actually the resignation. And they found out that by far the biggest impact on resignation has the organizational culture. So 3 times more people said that they are leaving because of toxic workplace culture than people who said they are leaving because of insecurity, because of not being noticed, because of not being developed, and so on and so on. So by far 3 times bigger was the impact of toxic culture than the second, third, and fourth reason. So this is what tells us somehow the story that we are not looking at our people as human beings, and this is what tells me, or this is what of the outcomes of talking about human resources, and so on, and work-life balance, and all kind of things telling people that you should be living outside of work. I'm also living when I'm at work. Sometimes I'm even more passionate. I'm spending even more energy than at home. Many times, especially when I was working in Korea, I arrived home only to fall in bed, and try to survive until the next day. So it's very hard to put all these things into motion. So I really think that when you start to acknowledge your people as human beings, provide them, place to grow, provide them nourishment, provide them somehow a place to develop themselves, that way, you can change many things. Otherwise, we are transactional. And you are a trend consultant, and Raul will come to anyone at trend consulting, will say, I will give you more, and people will go to him. But this is actually not happening, because if you love your organization and you don't need to fit in, but you belong in your organization because we have a common story and a common vision, then anybody can come to our organization and try to poach people. They will not be succeeding.
Yeah, that's the key thing. But
and maybe just one more element to add, because I know from the audience probably they're asking, okay, but what about results? Aren't they important? Of course they are. And let's mention this as well. We would need, let's say, a balance, or the sweet spot of balance between challenging the people but not over challenging them, and reduce the challenge but not to the point that they feel like bored. Or so it's very hard to get there, but I think that's where we should aim.
But I also think that some things are coming from fear. Many times managers are saying, I need to put the standard high because people won't put their own standards. And if we actually empower people and let them, to feel good and let them try to prove their best, we will see that they will sometimes set much higher standards than we would. But the whole idea, is trust. And this is what the whole situation is changing. When you let all your employees go home, you lost micromanagement, you lost control. And if you don't have trust, then it's a hard time for you, and it's hard time for your organization.
Definitely.
And if you cannot make the switch from control to trust, then it's very happy. Very, very hard. And I have seen managers who said, okay, trust is good, but control is better.
Oh yeah. Okay, no surprise there. Let's make this practical. Let's imagine the 3 of us were an executive team of a company where the only thing that we know, there's a lot of people that are leaving. It's starting to be painful because our HR team can't refill it. Also, a lot of knowledge and talent is gone now, and they're not coming back. So that's our main pain point, right? So at this point, we don't really care about anything else. It's just that. What should we be asking ourselves? Where do we start to even get to the bottom of what's really happening?
I'll have a go at it. So I'll get back to what Magor was saying earlier. I think we should question a bit about who we are as a company, going back to culture. I've seen this because I joined a few months ago in UiPath, and UiPath is a company that believes strongly in its culture and was built upon the values. And it was amazing for me to come and see that even if it's a younger company, I see people that have been 4 or 5 plus years with the company who are looked at tenured employees, really living daily those type of values. So for me, it was another, let's say, another proof that where the company, the leadership, and the people around them are actually looking at this and how to say this, be part of building and strengthening that culture. It evolves and captures most of them, of course. Nothing happens like with all of them. But so to get back to your question, this is the first thing we should be looking at. You know, why we exist? Why is our company out there? What are we trying to solve that it's superior than KPIs and objectives and get some money in the pocket? Now that's not important, but still, what are we trying to solve that is bigger than us?
You know, I was working many years in NGOs, and I remember I went to an international congress. It was about fundraising, and everybody was happy. We reached 1 billion or 100 million, I don't even know. And everybody was happy. And I, raised my hand and stood up and I said, okay, and what does this mean related to our dream, to our goal? What is actually this money is translated for? What are we actually saving, or what are we actually changing? And the room was in silence. Everybody was so focused on the actual goal, they forgot why are we doing it. And this is, I do think, one of the big problems that we are facing right now. I'm looking at many companies, the stock exchange, many things happened in the last few days when very beautiful companies with very beautiful dreams somehow forget their dreams. And after a while you see in evaluation of employees, of shareholders and everybody else. So I do think that what will differentiate in this period companies will be if we are able to recreate our stories and rely people around the stories or not. And after you discovered your why, and you convinced everybody in your organization, okay, this is the goal we are going for, then we look at the organizational culture. I actually had this situation in Korea when I went in, and we had a tremendous turnover. And I remember I was thinking every day, if more people are leaving, I will remain without knowledge. And it's terrible, to have an office somewhere, and if you lose all your people, no matter how systems do you have to keep the information, the new people who will come in will not be able to read that information. It's like, the Romans are going back to ancient Egypt and try to use their civilization. It's a different language, it's a different writing, everything is different. So losing people, and we always underestimate, even if you lose your worst employee, it will hurt your results. And this is what we should be thinking. So first of all, what is the culture? What is causing this? And after you found the root cause, which is usually originated in the leadership team, then you can make some changes.
Yeah, so that's good, and I think it's absolutely correct to first of all reconnect with the purpose. That makes a lot of sense. But the 3 executives in the leadership team that are just wondering why people are going, they can, all right, well, our purpose is, maybe it's not so grand, maybe we just produce a couple of valves for, I don't know, a heating system or something like that. That's our business, that's what we do. So it may not be as inspiring as with, some of the other more world-changing companies. And then there's one of us, let's say it's me, it's standing up as the sales guy and saying, right, beyond that, our purpose is to just, sell this stuff, right? So let's go sell this stuff. And I have still no idea why the people are going, because our salary is at least average, and also we have a pinball machine in the canteen, which is our latest acquisition for making people happy, and people are so ungrateful. So what's wrong? So where do we go from there? Because that's kind of what you'll be hearing a lot too, I guess.
If I'm in the leadership team, I don't look at the people. I look at myself. And one of the big mistakes that we are doing is that we are making a mistake and thinking that climate is actually culture. Having a pinball machine raises the climate. Having good salaries raises the climate. but what actually matters, how do we treat each other, what are the expected behaviors in our organization. And this is what is life-changing for the people. How do I feel when I walk in? And especially, if you are looking at your people and telling why are they are not performing, then you most probably are missing some very crucial aspects, because culture is like a waterfall. It's always coming from the bottom and coming down. And if they are having some kind of behaviors which are they constantly repeating, probably you are doing those behaviors. And whenever we are starting an organizational change program, we always say, if you are the leader and you are not ready to change, we will not have this program. Because any organizational change program is basically a leadership change program. You are changing the leadership team, you are changing the behaviors and the expectations and the basic assumptions there. So that's about that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what to add. Maybe one more idea would be just thinking about what is the problem that we're trying to solve. Is the problem that we're trying to solve that our people are leaving, or is the problem that we cannot get people in from the market? Because these are two different topics to handle. And I think
you think they're not related?
In somehow yes, or they may be related, but they may have quite different solutions or paths to go through. So just to add on that, maybe it's just a matter of going back to the idea of stories. If you're the sales guy and you say, I just have to sell this, maybe we need to recreate the story to see how your clients are impacted by what you sell, how you make a bigger impact in their lives or their communities and so on, even if you sell pipes or whatever you sell.
Yeah. It will probably not be as grand as some of the,
but
one
of the things when we are talking about recruitment, and I never understood this, that we have a culture in which it's totally understandable and even normal to lie in the interview. Companies are coming and telling things about themselves which are actually not true, and candidates are coming and telling things about themselves which is actually not true. And when we actually say, okay, we will go together, we are starting to discover things about each other which are untrue, and we started to be unhappy. It would be not much simpler to actually say who we are, and it would be not much simpler to actually try to attract the people who belong in your culture, who are actually culture fit, because we are saying no matter what the cost, bring in the talent. Sometimes a talented person can destroy your organizational culture because it's not a good fit culturally, and we are totally disregarding this thing. So I do think that a good recruitment person should be not a good marketer, but should be a good people person in order to empathically being able to explain to the people who tries to recruit what is actually happening inside the organization. And this is what is not yet happening, or in too few places.
Do you think it ever will? I mean,
Yes.
I think it's a long shot, right? That recruiters or generally companies will be honest about that's, maybe my workplace culture really is like very results driven, and that it doesn't deploy a lot of empathy to people. But we're very successful, and if that's the truth, a lot of people today would go like, it's not really like a place I want to be. And even if the pay is good, so I'm wondering if that's ever going to be the case, to be so open. But it's funny that you say that, because I think you're actually right. So in the worst case, two people sign the contract as a consequence of having lied to each other very efficiently.
Yeah, but we have this in every aspect of our life. When we go on our first date, usually again we exaggerate on some aspects, and we are treating this as a normal, and it shouldn't be somehow normal. And when we are looking at the numbers of Great Resignation, at the beginning we said, okay, low level, low payment people actually changed because of pay, because of unhappiness, or not earning living wages, and so on and so on. The second sector worst hit in the US is actually management consulting. These are the bigger, so they have employing they are employing the most white-collared jobs. They are really highly paid, and they are leaving. Why? Organizational culture. It's just a fact.
So I've heard a super interesting interview with, I forgot the name, a professor, and it was published on Harvard, who was studying this phenomenon a little bit also. And he made such an interesting statement, which was that he was always wondering why human resources or people are looked at, even by the CFO, as an expense, whereas as pretty much the only asset that's not depreciating over time, but if you nurture it, is actually growing over time. So it's more of an investment rather than an expense. What do you think about that?
Well, I do think that I'm an optimist by nature. So if I look back 10, 15 years ago in the market in Romania and basically in Eastern Europe, most of the finance schools were taught or were teaching the future finance managers to look at this as expenses, as costs, and so on, which it still happens. However, I think in the last years there was a bit of a shift because the HR teams have done quite a good job, most of them, in positioning themselves a little bit closer to the business. So implementing this kind of partnership and so on. So I think this has helped the market mature a bit, closer to the Western type of markets. And I think nowadays there are, of course, finance managers who still look at this as cost. But I think most of the CEOs or most of the leadership teams are actually realizing that people are an investment. And in all honesty, without the people, there is no business. No business exists without those people. So I think when you look at it this way, it's always going to be an investment.
I have a great example here. Right before the pandemic, I was invited to the Congress of the Epidemiological Society in Romania. All the epidemiological doctors were in, and they were talking about how to avoid the future epidemics. And a consultant from London came, holding a keynote speech, and he said, in this room there are only doctors, but 80% of how successful you will be in fighting when an epidemic will come will be on the shoulders of the cleaning team. Do we have anybody from any cleaning team, from any hospital? No. Those are the people who are actually making sure that the viruses or the bacteria doesn't go around. And nobody was thinking about them. And these are the systematic errors that we are doing over and over again. We are underestimating a lot of our workforce, and we are underestimating what their impact can be. And sometimes, even in very white-collar, very, very highly qualified offices, miss some key people who can change the whole dynamic of the team, and they are not the ones who are producing necessarily the greatest idea. So this is why I do think. And also, if you don't invest in because this is the classical discussion between the CEO and the CFO, when the CFO is saying, what happens if we invest in all our people and they are leaving the company? And the CEO says, okay, but what will happen if we don't invest? And they will say, stay. So this is the whole idea, What do you want from your people? You are governing or you are leading people out of fear or out of trust. And this is the whole idea. I'm totally thinking, and this is somehow life philosophy. If you are not able to convince your people to stay, you shouldn't be in business. It's not about payment, it's not about anything else, it's about sharing a dream.
Oh.
And talking about philosophy, maybe one more idea to add here. I think that in most parts of the world, we are in a certain level of development that we're not talking about, basic needs of surviving. So when you look at this, maybe the whole point of having large corporations, large businesses is to make or help or create an environment where people can live their best life possible, or grow communities, or help the ones around them to be sustainable, to have 120, 200, 300 years, maybe even a higher level of quality of life. So I think that a lot of CEOs and a lot of leaders are at some point when they get after the phase of proving themselves as business people that can get the results, I think most of them go a bit towards this: how can I improve my people's lives? How can we make a company that is not just a company, but it's a great place to work on, and it's a great place to live in, you know.
Mm. You know what, he was saying something just a little bit earlier that went through my head, and now I know what I want to ask you about that. And that is when you were saying that you believe that, you know, in most companies now, the HR team has been doing a good job to come a little bit closer to the business, they have influence on the culture. But I find that difficult to reconcile with that the numbers of those people that are leaving now are increasing so sharply. So it seems to me that maybe that's the business environments that you're familiar with. And UiPath, for example, is this super modern company, and maybe they just started from a completely different base. But I'm wondering if not the majority would still have a leadership culture that operates from that old model that isn't really looking at creating a culture where people feel like they can be their best selves, but rather like, we have a transaction. You owe me 8 hours of your life today, and you're going to do what I say. So I'm wondering I'm not saying I have the answer, but I wonder where the truth is. If the majority out there is still wondering and pulling their hair as to why this is happening, or is there actually a realization in a general sense that as leadership teams and as leaders, we actually have to change something inside ourselves, perhaps? I'm wondering. Just putting this out there.
Well, I don't know. First of all, of course, I don't have any data to support one or the other. My personal feeling is, even joining in UiPath, because it's a company that is, let's say, younger and it's in full development. And I think this happens also in more mature company. But you can see a culture, or you can see a bunch of cultures within a culture sometimes. And I think this will help the leadership market and management market go towards a bit more conscious behaviors. Because especially within the same company, you can see some of the teams performing really well and be really good, and people being very happy and so on, and some others don't. So probably this pressure will start building up, or this is my hope, this pressure will start building up a bit more within each company and within the market itself, that some of the leaders that are still on the old side of thinking will say, okay, I'm doing the same as he or she does or not? And if not, what am I not doing that the other leader is doing, that their people are so happy they're not leaving, and so on. So,
yeah, I love that example, because actually you're absolutely right. It reminds me of that. I've been able to observe this too, that inside a company who has one general, on paper, half-lived company culture, there's always going to be this effect when there's somebody who's looking for, let's say, a career step, or maybe just wants to change the position inside the company. There's going to be this one team that they say, no, I don't want to go there. You know, I want to go to this guy or to this woman.
Absolutely.
And I think when you hear something like that, it must be about that microculture that's happening inside that team.
And you know, sometimes I think anybody who actually worked in an organization knows that we like to put big on the walls some values, and we most definitely will live inside some maybe close, maybe further away values. So there are the aspirational values and there are the real values. And the real values are the one motivating and keeping people inside. So we are still somehow in the mindset, you know, we like to put the big words on the wall, but we think that reality is not applying on ourselves, and we still see, and this is the higher you go, the more you can see when leaders are not aligned with their own speech, with their own declaration, and this has a very huge effect on people.
Oh yeah.
And now, as Raul said, we are starting to reach a different level in our not necessarily wealth, but in our financial evolution. And it's not about assuring our safety, it's not about survival, it's also about we are starting to put questions about our happiness, about our fulfillment. And it's not enough if you come to me and you say, I will give you, I don't know, 5,000 more, 10,000 more. It's nothing for me in an idea. Right now I'm very satisfied. Maybe if you will be able to bring me a bigger dream, or something which motivates me, or something which has some added value to me, then we can talk. And this is the problem with transactionalism and money. It's always looking on what do you have to offer. You don't look on what actually people want. And this what we will realize soon, that until we are not able and not willing to look at the people and ask them, what do you actually want? They will not come to our companies. And you see this especially in the IT sector, when companies are poaching employees from one another, giving higher and higher and higher salaries, and that at some point it will stop. Because at some point the level of the salaries will not be sustainable anymore, like it happened in the football industry and many other industries. And then you will need to rethink the whole system and say, okay, we started this way, but we do not have unlimited budgets, we do not have unlimited financing. What else can we do? And then you will go back to old-fashioned, what do you actually want? And it will change everything. And if you look at the millennials, and if you look especially at the Generation Z, they are totally not interested in money. And when we will start to interact on day-to-day basis and we will try to hire them, we will realize that we need to change. We cannot change them.
Right. I don't know which year this is going to be anymore. No, hold on. With that, like half of the workforce will be but it's not very far out. Maybe it's already happening. I'm not sure. But we're kind of close, and it's going to be fast, right? Absolutely. So that's going to be a huge challenge.
You know, when I talk with Gen Z people and I ask, how was your job interview? And they said, great. And I asked, what did they offer? And he looks at me and we didn't talk about that. And then you realize, you know, where are the priorities? You know, he's interested, how can I develop? What will you offer me? What will be my work schedule? Where will I work? And so on and so on. And then at the very end of the story, it will be, okay, how much do you offer me? And we are the other way. We want to clarify the salary, and we presume if you are fitting what we want to offer, you are ours. Yeah. And it's not working anymore.
Yeah, I'm wondering actually in this context, if it would be a good question for us as a team who knows something's got to change, if we ask ourselves, what is it that we would need to do so that everybody who works for us, when they wake up on the morning, they actually look forward to coming versus dreading to come. So how can we make this something that feels somehow fulfilling, feels encouraging, feels inspiring, feels like a learning journey that you're not afraid to go on because it's stretched, as you said, but it's not in the sense of if you fail, I'm going to chop your head off. It's more about if I fail, let's see, you know, where did I miss helping you, you know, or something like that. And I believe, actually, that's what I truly believe. It's when we create an environment where people, you know, love the Monday morning and not hate it, then I think we've done it right. And it's possible. I know it's possible. I've seen companies where that is the case, where people go excited. They're not necessarily super keen on Friday evening because they're kind of forced to stop, and they love what they do. And there are companies out there that can create it, so it is possible.
One of the problems is, you know, it's very hard to imagine this if you never lived it.
Yes.
For a very big part of my life, I said that happiness at work is just a myth. And I do not want to believe in fairy tales, so I should settle. And right now, you know, I actually realized this year that I was happy going on holiday, but I was also happy coming back from holiday. I said, okay, now I'm rested, now I'm full of energy. I barely wait to go back and give my best. And this is a great feeling.
Yeah.
And this is what we should know. There are a lot of cultures around us where you actually can develop as a human being. And we want two things. We want, you know, to belong, and we need to evolve. These are two basic needs. And if you find a place when these two are aligned, then you are happy.
That sounds good. And it also sounds like a wonderful end of our talk, because we reached the end of our time. Thank you so much to both of you. I could have gone on for hours with you, which we might do at some later point.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It was a great pleasure.
Good.
Thank you.